welcome to another Take 5. So I'm out here in the backyard as Tropical Storm Elsa begins to make its way through. Now fortunately, because of technology and radar and satellite, we have the capability of being able to kind of track the path of a storm and give people plenty of warning so they can be ready for the storm. Unfortunately, in life, we don't have that technology. Storms in life can be very unpredictable. And yet, you and I can be ready for whatever storms life tends to bring our way. Whether it's a storm of difficulties in our health, whether it's a financial storm, economic storm, whether it is a storm that comes through in our relationships, maybe it's a spiritual storm that comes through in the form of temptation and sin, you and I can be ready for the storms. When I think about tropical storm, hurricane, rain, I can't help but to think back about Noah. It had never rained on the earth before. And yet God gave Noah explicit instructions to build an ark because there was a storm coming. And because Noah was obedient and faithful to the Lord, when the rains began to come down, Noah was saved. He was ready for the storm. And the key there is not just that Noah was a righteous man. The key there is that Noah was faithful and obedient to the instructions of God, even when they didn't make sense. Who thinks about building an ark when it's never rained on the earth before, when there's no such thing as a flood? But Noah trusted God. Noah's faith was in the Lord, and Noah was obedient. And so faith and obedience becomes very important if we're going to be ready for the storms of this life. You see, when we are not living in a right relationship with God, when we are not trusting Him, when we are in control of our own lives instead of putting the one who has all the power and the wisdom in control, storms come along and we are very unprepared for them. Not so for Noah, and it doesn't have to be the case for you and I. If we will make sure that we are living in a right relationship with God, if we will make sure that the grace of God through Jesus Christ is in place in our life, we will find that through God's power we can weather any storm. That's really what Jesus was talking about near the end of His Sermon on the Mount when He said there were two builders. One of them built his house upon the rock. And when the winds came down and beat against the house and the rains were falling, that house stood because it had its foundation on the rock. But the man who built his house on the sand, when the rains came down and the winds beat against that house, it fell with a great crash. Therefore, he who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like the man who built his house on the rock. Hearing these words of Jesus, hearing the Word, and not just hearing the Word and knowing the Word, not just being in the Word, but putting the Word into practice, living it out in our life. When we do that in faith and obedience, no matter what storm comes our way, we are ready for the storm. Because we have one who walks through the storm with us. We have one who is our shelter, who is our protection, who is our refuge. And so, whether you are in the midst of a storm right now, whether there is a storm coming into your life that you don't even know about right now, I want to encourage you, be storm ready.